Brandon Bailey again, here with another music discussion video this week. This week we're going to be talking about someone completely different from what I've been talking about recently. Still in the rock vein here, but less of the classic rock. Maybe they're considered classic by today. I don't know what the standards are for considering something classic are these days. But yeah, just not a classic kind of rock artist. Definitely something more of my generation. And yeah, just a little bit of a different style to go for here, but not too much. Just a lot different from the UK hard rock kind of stuff that I was reviewing with the last two artists. So this time we have the very well-known MGMT, acronym for the management, which I did not know back when I was younger. I was like, MGMT? I was like, what is MGMT? Like, I wasn't that dumb. I knew it was MGMT, I just didn't know what it stood for. Anyway, yeah, they're a band. You know, I think most people would consider them a duo or whatever, but they really are a band. There's two more members, actually I think more, besides Andrew and Ben, who were the two main dudes, you know, on the front cover of Oracular Spectacular, obviously. But they do have more people involved with them. It's just not them two. Though that kind of, in a way, kind of similar to Tears for Fears, if you're familiar with them. The fact that they are kind of portrayed as a duo to a certain extent, kind of mystifies who's playing some of the parts on some of these albums and who does what with their roles in MGMT, because you know there's more guys behind the scene in the band than just Andrew and Ben, but because of that portrayal, unless you actually look up the personnel credits on all these tracks, I mean, you wouldn't really know who does what in every song outside of the vocals and their voices, which can even blend together sometimes. So yeah, so I guess that's a little bit of explaining about how to perceive some of their music. More so on my history, I subconsciously knew who they were from the movie 21. They had the song Time to Pretend in that, and I think that was the first time that I had ever heard an MGMT song, period. Though I didn't know who they were yet. I hadn't seen a music video on MTV or anything like that on YouTube. Nothing like that yet. And then I would say give it maybe a year or two later. I mean, I thought that was a catchy song. Didn't really think much of who it was or, you know, much about it really, other than it was a good song for that movie. And I joined a band with this guy named Cody Cole, who's also in a band with me now. He's still in a band with me, except for I play bass in that band now. But he was in my first band, Relic, which was a thrash metal band back in the day. And I was as I've said in other reviews on here, I was such a metal purist, kind of back in my teenage years, and of course, being in a metal band, I wanted to keep it purely traditional heavy metal, kind of inspired, and of course that wasn't gonna happen, having a band with 5 or 6 different people. Everybody's gonna have their own tastes. And one of the things I remember being turned on to that was different than metal at the time, that kind of started expanding my horizons, was MGMT. And I'll tie this into Cody in a second here, but basically they came around on what I call the last hurrah for discovering music videos just because they were popular. You know what I mean? Not just because they were on the related videos section on your YouTube feed. You know, you discovered videos because your friends were still talking about them, you know what I mean? Similar to how they would back in the day on MTV and stuff. One of your friends in school or something would be like, yo, did you check out that video that just came out last week? Sorry. Already flubbing up my speech here. But, yeah, you know what I mean? If you experienced these different eras, kind of having, like they were on MTV, but what I'm more so talking about is like the on-demand, like cable television experience with music videos. Anybody who had like the cable box with the on-demand thing knows what I'm talking about. You basically had like a, what was it called, Music Choice on there. I think it was different for every provider, but Music Choice was what you had if you had like Comcast or something back in the day. And yeah, it would be like the same thing. You'd go to a school or something, and one of your friends that also had cable would be like, yo, did you see that video or something that was on demand? Like, you got to check that out. And the cool thing about this at the time is that in a similar way to how cool YouTube and like other aspects of music on the internet are, you could discover things that maybe came from a more underground kind of style of music and weren't as well known, or trying to cater to whatever MTV was trying to portray in pop culture at that time. There really were no limits to like what would get on there, because they would just advertise every single kind of music that exists in the whole world. I wouldn't even know about a lot of different styles of music if it weren't for that, probably. But anyway, Cody was one of my friends who also had an on-demand box at the time, and I just remember when I first started, smoking the cannabis at the time back then. I was hanging out with him. The band was hanging out at his house, and we kind of had these sessions where we'd all just kind of like trade off like music videos on the on-demand thing or on YouTube, depending on what the hell we were looking at the time. But most of the time we'd be in Cody's living room on the on-demand. And man, Cody just always had the best video choices back then, probably because he just spent a lot of time watching the on-demand stuff. But like, I just remember Electric Feel by MGMT being like one of the first things he ever showed me. And let me tell you, this guy does not stop listening to this song to this day. I remember back then I didn't really get the MGMT thing because I was more of a metalhead, though I did think the video was super trippy, and it kind of started expanding my horizons into more psychedelic kind of music. And I kind of did appreciate them slightly, even though I was so close-minded still at the time. I did appreciate them slightly for bringing something to the table musically that I had never heard before. Something that I thought that was gonna completely shake the foundations of popular music to come, and it kind of did, I suppose. So yeah, I thank Cody for turning me on to MGMT, even back then when I probably made fun of him a bit for liking them, but it was in not like a bullying way. Like, I was just like, confused, I guess. Like, he was in a metal band, but yet he liked more like kind of hippie-ish, psychedelic, indie kind of music. But Cody really likes everything. It was just back then, I'm speaking of. So yeah, I discovered Electric Feel, and then from there, like, somehow kids came into my, came into my viewing through MTV somehow. I remember when that video came out on MTV, and it was like kind of a big deal. And then like I completely missed Congratulations when that album came out. Like, they didn't come out too far apart from one another, but I remember discovering Congratulations later and just being like, what the hell? Like, how did I miss this? Probably because I just wasn't really into the whole MGMT thing at the time, so it was like I wasn't keeping up with it. But I'll get into it, but like, yeah, like, how could I miss something like that? So good. So, I remember Beavis and Butthead came back out with the second generation, if you want to call it that, on MTV, where they came back in 2011, and they still did some music videos, but most of what they did with the music videos back in like the early episodes was turned into like them watching like Jersey Shore or something like that. And I remember they still did a couple music videos on those couple seasons, but there wasn't as many. But luckily there were some like rock, like good rock, indie rock kind of acts on there, and I remember seeing the video for Kids on that too, and I remember that kind of having more an impression on me. I don't know why. Maybe because like the video didn't stick with me as much, aside from it being trippy. And then like when Beavis and Butthead were like kind of joking about it, and I kind of could see that MGMT was seeping even further into pop culture. I guess it gave me a little bit of an appreciation for them, because I was also obsessed with Beavis and Butthead, being a metalhead back then. So yeah, then kind of didn't hear much about MGMT from that point on, and I guess I was still growing my taste into heavy metal music a little more, and got out of high school, started getting into more psychedelic music upon doing some psychedelics, you know what I mean, and that kind of expanded my horizon into listening to different kinds of music and appreciating things not just because they were heavy or technical, or, you know, they show off like skills or something in that aspect. Just had me appreciating things because they purely sound good and they resonate with me, and because they evoke that psychedelic experience. So in regards to that, around this time that I was doing this, I hung out with one of my friends who had an awesome CD collection, turned me on to a bunch of artists that I'm glad he did at the time. I won't get into too many specifics about whose those were, because I can talk about them in other videos, probably. But he did turn me on to Congratulations by MGMT, showed me some of those songs. Specifically, the title track had an impact on me at first. I just was totally blown away about those crazy keyboard lines in there, and the melancholy of the lyrics and how chill it was. It just seemed to me to be so different from, you know, anything on Oracular Spectacular. And funny enough about Congratulations is that the single It's Working was also on Beavis and Butthead, the second generation of it, like I was talking about. And somehow I missed that, like, episode, you know what I mean? If I would have seen that, I would have been like, oh, new MGMT song, and that probably would have connected with me somehow. But yeah, I remember watching through those seasons later and being like, oh, It's Working was on here? What? They did 2 MGMT songs? Like, it just blew my mind. Anyway, that was a tangent, but I was just kind of expressing how, again, Congratulations just kind of slipped past my radar somehow. Yeah, and then, let's see, started growing more of an appreciation for their, like, psychedelic side, though I still didn't know much of their work. Hadn't really listened to a full album yet up to that point. And, the self-titled MGMT came out, I guess, like, maybe a few years later after that time, because that time would have been about, like, 2013, so yeah. I was kind of getting into discovering new music at this particular time that the self-titled came out. Like, well, I don't want to say too much into discovering new music, because I probably did still miss a lot and still probably didn't listen to stuff just because I was unfamiliar with it. But what I'm talking about is, like, at this time I actually took an interest to go on Wikipedia and go to the albums being released during this certain year page, and tried my best in 2014 and 2015 to keep up with, like, whatever was coming out that I was interested on there. And I remember seeing the MGMT album on there sometime, I guess early on during me doing that, and listening to it, you know, and kind of, I mean, I guess I'll get into that with my review and everything, but, you know, kind of just soaking it in, but barely. And then, yeah, they kind of took a big hiatus after that, and you didn't really hear much about them. And then Little Dark Age came out right towards, like, the beginning of COVID, really. And I really loved that album. And yeah, before I give away too much about which albums I like more and don't, yeah, I'll just say that I'm glad that they seem to be back at it. I mean, they're playing shows. I don't know if they plan on releasing new material, but I hope so. MGMT is really cool. They always seem to be doing some new awesome stuff, and I like the honesty they convey in their music a lot, and just the total psychedelic, just fucked up atmosphere that comes along with pretty much all of their songs. So yeah. Anyway, that's my history with them. A little bit about how I know them in general and all that. But now we shall get into the ranking. And they only have 4 albums, so this is going to be another short ranking here, but 4 important albums nonetheless. I don't think that just because they don't have a whole lot that gives me a reason to not review them. They kind of have big gaps in between when they release albums, so I don't foresee a new one coming out soon. If they do, I'll try to review it and add it into here somehow. We'll see about that though. But anyway, for now, 4 albums, and at the bottom has to be something, right? And I think most people, judging by what I've read and seen online, would agree with this one. Don't think this is much of a surprise if you know where I'm going. And number 4 at the bottom is the self-titled MGMT album. Into my notes. Just when you think it can't get weirder and trippier in their discography, you are quickly proven wrong. This time they instead have a lot of messed up my sentence already. This time they instead of... Oh man, my handwriting's so terrible. You guys have to forgive me when I mess up, because I'm just trying to read quickly, and sometimes my brain and my handwriting don't let me do that. Just when you think it can't get weirder and trippier in their discography, you are quickly proven wrong. This time, though, instead of a lot of winding, progressive elements to most of the songs, they employ their knack for experimenting with crazy sounds over top of more rhythmic and groove-based tracks, as well as some drony ambiance with a couple slow burners. The danceability of some of the songs are juxtaposed with the depressive and pessimistic tone of the lyrics. It does make most of the vocal performances come off sarcastic and sometimes monotone, but the way they use these characteristics to convey the emotions and messages about them, their fans, the music industry up to this point, it's all done very well. It's as if most of the songs are crafted to being close to poppy and super catchy, like early fans complained about them losing, but they are also dark and all mostly have elements or moments in every song that just sound fucked up or demented. They deliver a record with commercial appeal on the surface, but take risks no album aiming for commerciality would dare do. The track order pacing is fine, but the dronier, more down-tempo songs on the back half do have a hypnotic quality that can make it sort of sleepy. Lots of good drum sounds throughout the album here, though. Crazy synths throughout, too, that sometimes become a little loud and overtake or overwhelm the rest of the instruments, but most have, like, such wild noises going on and they're so well placed within each song that it doesn't really bother me too much to where I would say this is unlistenable or some shit. So yeah, self-titled at the bottom, 3 out of 5 stars. Again, you know, if it's above 2, that means it's a good album for me. I can return to this, I'll listen to it to some extent after doing these reviews. So yeah, good stuff. It had to be at the bottom because I just feel it's their weakest. It doesn't have as many memorable songs. Now, my number 3 might be a little surprising or shocking to most die-hard MGMT fans, especially those that, before I give too much away, have been there since the beginning. What am I about to say? At number 3 is their debut album, Oracular Spectacular. I know a lot of people are probably shocked on this one. This one probably still reigns at the top of a lot of people's lists. Some people dropped off of MGMT completely after this album because they just seem to want to disconnect from their mainstream audience. But I'll get into it, why I feel this album belongs at number 3, kind of in the middle. It's an album that very much feels conceptually based around celebration of childhood, youth, and also coming of age. Lots of psychedelic textures established on the debut. Huge emphasis on making all of the keys and synth parts as trippy as possible. Some of the song structures are quite different from the norm too. There's a lot of contrast between the obvious hits on here and the more progressive and experimental deep cuts. It does detract from the flow of the album musically, but thematically, each song's lyrics and vibe do tie every song on the album together nicely. Genre-wise, the sound they create is a perfect blend of old and new psychedelic / progressive pop / rock. I remember at the time it was quite the strange new sonic palette to experience. There are many emotions on display throughout, but the emphasis seems to be more on sparking imagination and creativity, and having as much fun making these songs as possible. The flow of the album feels imaginary, as if it is a musical journey back through adolescence. Everything is mixed beautifully, even when the sounds start getting crazier throughout a track. The halfway sarcastic but melancholic falsetto vocal delivery is so trademark of them right off the bat too. And right on the debut, they show that they know how to change voices and styles to alter the way a story or theme in general is conveyed in their music. So they bring a lot to the table that they're known for right off the bat, which is really awesome. All good bands can do something like that, or should on their debut anyway. How many people can say they have a debut as solid as Erectacular Spectacular? As solid or as successful, really. Or influential, this album probably inspired generations of indie pop and, neo-psychedelic artists. And this is a genre-defining album, right? This is the definition of neo-psychedelia to me. What that means and what it should sound like when you hear it. One of the first albums of its ilk. Okay, so it just sits above the self-titled because of reasons that I guess I gotta get into with the next albums on here to try and justify why I think the songs are better on those. And here we go. So at number 2 is the final at this time album, Little Dark Age. Oh shit, fuck, before I mess that up, before I move on to Little Dark Age, Erectacular Spectacular was 4 out of 5 stars. Now moving on to number 2 with Little Dark Age, we have that at 4.5 out of 5 stars, moving up a half star here. So we moved up 1 from MGMT to Erectacular Spectacular. Don't know why I'm having so much trouble saying that today. Go figure. And then we're moving up a half star to Little Dark Age. Okay, so a very gloomy yet melancholic album at times. Some songs have an upbeatness about them musically, but the lyrics and themes don't reflect it, really, once again. With that said, it is a much stronger lot of songs than the previous release. Any song, aside from the mostly instrumental Days That Got Away, seem like they were well crafted with catchy hooks. Musically, it's a proper combination of elements from all 3 of the previous albums. It has the catchiness and poppy synth sounds at the debut. It has the epic eclecticism of Congratulations and the dissonant, noisy bits of the self-titled. This makes for an album that, in theory, should appease any fan who preferred some of the previous ones over any of the others. And while doom and gloom are very apparent here, I don't feel that it drags it down for its enjoyability, nor does it ooze toxicity in its own projection of what it's talking about. I feel these themes are presented in a more effective and poignant way than the self-titled, though a lot of the sour taste of their experience with their careers in the music biz and the way that the world is evolving, or rather devolving, around them It's pretty similar to both of the themes portrayed on the last 2 LPs. Sonically, though, it's mixed so well and sounds perfectly balanced, like all the little pieces for every song are in the right place. Some of the song titles and lyrics seem silly and non-serious at first glance on here, but it all makes sense and it's all enjoyable once you start listening to the whole thing and you get where they're going with it. And yeah, sure, some of the things on here are pretty similar to a lot of stuff that's on the self-titled, which was at the bottom for me, but I just feel like everything is so much more honed in and focused on here, and it's just, the songs themselves are stronger. Almost every song on here is pretty damn memorable and catchy. I love it. Yeah, if they're gonna go out with this one, they went out with a bang. I hope they don't, because it's, you know, it's only 4 albums, pretty short discography, but it is what it is, you know. I can't knock somebody for, you know, taking their own creative freedom to do things like that. Anyway, moving on to my number 1. If you guys pay attention, you should know what's next. I shouldn't have to say that really all the time in these videos, especially when an album's, especially when a discography is so short like this one, but really, we know what's coming next. I think a lot of people have this at the top of their lists, see it as the superior album. Maybe not as many as a Rectacular Spectacular, but at number 1 we have Congratulations, and I feel that this album is just their magnum opus. It's a big evolution of crafting more complex songs from the debut, though fans who were expecting any similar tracks to the 3 hits from the debut would be disappointed to find that they have fully adopted their prog and psych tendencies for this one, and really have no intentions of putting a pop banger on here. Nothing like Electric Feel or Kids or Time to Pretend. MGMT fans know what I'm talking about, because like that seems to be the shadow that looms over top of their whole career, is those 3 songs. It's like critics will always say that they can never live up to Kids, Time to Pretend, and Electric Feel, and I just completely disagree. There's so much more substance to them than that, and it's just a shame that, you know, that had an effect on them in such a drastic way. Because they're good songs, they just, like, you know, aren't what MGMT is truly about. They're just pop hits. Instead, their poppiness is employed to add catchy hook after catchy hook to these otherwise pretty wild and avant-garde songs. A couple songs have some of the simplicity of some songs from the first album, but every song mostly takes you on some journey. As far as the mixing goes, it's pretty much flawless for as trippy of an album as it is, all except for the vocals, which are a little buried and muffled in sections where they're either a little quiet in delivery or the instrumentation begins to overload or overwhelm them. All of the keys and synth work is so top-notch. This album also has immaculate drum work and mixing on it. Each member really proves they have no bounds for making equally interesting and complementary parts for every song. The flow is nice too. It has a nice balance of the different vibes presented, though the flow is not really its strong suit. And yeah, with that being said on my notes here, Congratulations ends off at 4.5 out of 5 stars in their discography. Not bad, not bad. I mean, like, not everybody can be expected to have a perfect 5-star album in everybody's eyes. Though a lot of their work does come super duper close to hitting that territory for me. There's just certain things about every album that kind of maybe take away slightly from them. But yeah, Congratulations at the top for me. It's just super wild and trippy and progressive, and I don't feel like they've really reached the heights of this songwriting-wise again. Little Dark Age certainly gets close, and it's just such a new, fresh take on their sound that I can't help but love that. But yeah, really all their albums are super solid to me, really good experiences. Like I said, I love MGMT and what they go for. They're one of the best new modern bands out there. And I hope they keep it up. I hope that, you know, at this point in their career, they've kind of gotten past the hype of their first 3 singles that I was talking about from their debut, and they can just make awesome, weird, artsy music that, you know, keeps us all on the edge of our seat and bopping along, and just having weird-ass abstract experiences to them as well. Because what else should you do to MGMT's music? Especially while watching their videos. Like, if their music doesn't sell you on them right off the bat, please watch MGMT's music videos, and hopefully that'll do something for you, because they're pretty wild. Every single one of them is just absolutely a feat in music video production. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this ranking. Hopefully any of this made sense to you, and, you know, you want to come back and watch more videos. You know, like I said before, I'm going to do these for fun, and, like, it doesn't really matter, like, if you do or don't like it. I do encourage people to join in on the discussion, considering that's, like, the genre of these videos on YouTube, and they're popping up in your algorithm for some reason, right? So just trying to, you know, join the conversation online here, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Either way, I encourage you to subscribe, like my videos, share them around. You know, check out the other stuff on my channel. You know, I make music myself too. Just like to promote music in general however I can through these videos. So I will see you in the next one. Like I said, please like and subscribe, and watch the top 10 songs video tomorrow. Top 10 MGMT songs, my takeaways from their discography. All right, and I will see you there. Have a great day. Peace and love.